Testing, testing. Let's see how this sounds in my ear holes. Talking about 5D chess, motherfucker. Alright, listen up, all two people who play 5D chess still. I am fresh off of voice training and ready to do a YouTube video, and I am probably in the wrong here, but we'll see how it goes. So, 5D chess, right? It's called 5D chess, multiversal time travel. That means that you can time travel in chess. That is also 5 dimensions, right? Well, if you're not convinced, like all two people usually say, that 5D chess with multiversal time travel only has 4 dimensions. Then allow me to introduce you my insane ramblings, and yeah, get owned, idiot. Um, so first of all, 5D chess operates on a timeline system where you have branching timelines. Now, those timelines are represented as parallel with yours. However, what they actually are branches. More like they have the same origin point, but they go in opposite, like in other directions than parallel. They can't be parallel because they do intersect at one point, and it is a straight line in dimensional physics. And you can trust me on that because I took a semester of modern physics as a 2-year physics major. Pay no attention to my liberal arts degree. So, uh, furthermore, when when you get into the game and you make your first timeline move, the branch starts at that point and branches off. Then later in the game, you can travel between the timelines. That would seem like you have, your two spatial dimensions of the chessboard, X and Y, let's say. You have your one timeline, let's call it W for fun. And then bouncing between the timelines could be like, oh, what do people use for that? Q. Let's go with Q. I like the letter Q. So what ends up happening is that uh, what's actually happening is you're not bouncing between parallel timelines because that motion would be continuous and be consistent with the four dimensions that a lot of people I've seen cite as the 4 dimensions of this game. So, um, basically, when you have 4 dimensions of space-time, you have a continuous with limits, 2 spatial dimensions of a chessboard. You have a continuous within limits because you have an origin point and end point in the end game of time. However, in this particular game, you do not have a continuous motion between timelines because they're not parallel timelines. They're not advancing necessarily with the same outcome, just like with a slight deviation in the past. You can influence that in a way that isn't a parallel timeline action. Now, to explain this, I'm going to need a little bit of not suspension of disbelief, but just like go into a thought experiment with me. Okay, so let's say you have a line and you make that line wider. To travel, like that would be a square, right? A kind of rectangle action going on. So you can travel anywhere within the square so long as it's within the line without making other lines, right? Um, so that is an expansion into another dimension if you make a square out of a line. Um, Now, let's say instead of making a square, you draw another line going in another direction. It's not necessarily perpendicular, but it is traveling in a different direction than the first line. That would also be an expansion into a second dimension of that line. You're making a shape that can only exist in the 2 dimensionality instead of a line which can exist in 1 dimensionality. Now, the difference between these two is that anywhere within the square is continuous. What that means is that you can travel from one point in the square to another point in the square without leaving the square. Now, with the line example, if you try to travel to the other line, you're going to have to go back and up the other line. You can travel continuously, but you have to travel in a certain pattern. That is not what we're seeing in five-dimensional chess. What we're seeing is a shortcut. Shortcuts between those two ends of the line in a manner that is not continuous, like a square would be. And because of that, what we need is essentially a fold in the paper, a way for somebody to bring the lines together, so to speak, or at least jump across. If you're trying to travel from one line to the other, and like you're a little cricket or whatever, you can jump across, but that makes you go up in the third dimension of space. So that shortcut is using another dimension additionally to the other two. Now, if we take those three dimensions as our time dimensions in 5D chess, and we superimpose it on a 2D chessboard, what is 3 plus 2? It's 5. So, therefore, and probably irrefutably, 5D chess exists as a five-dimensional game, which means that anyone who plays it has a massive brain and a massive